Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, my name is Kate Strickland. I'm Associate Director of Application Review at the University of Colorado Boulder. I live in Boulder with my family, which includes a fifth grader and a freshman in high school.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I'm a college counselor and have read applications for a small liberal arts college and 2 research universities. My twins are recent college graduates.
Hi, I'm Lisa, a clinical psychologist and a college counselor and a co-author of the book, The Calm College Method. I have one daughter who's graduated from college, one daughter who's about to go to college, and a son who's about to go to high school.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you, as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. Good morning, friends. Have a couple announcements with you today, and then we'll dive into today's episode. So, as you know, there was a delay when we were between webmasters, and that meant that we couldn't upload a lot of the interviews. Well, they're almost all uploaded now. The one on Standard Strong, which was a 6-parter, that's up. The resumes one, which Heath just completed on Monday, that's up. Jennifer Gershberg, she did one on how to excel while in college. That's up. The 4-parter on tips for athletes to excel. The student athlete advisors did. That's up. Grace Robertson Lloyd did 2. One on what is the role of a regional, and she did one on Grinnell, a college spotlight on Grinnell. And then also Kelly Walter, 41-year veteran of Boston University. Her interview on BU is up as well. So those 7 are up, and by the weekend, you should have Miami, San Diego State University, and Barbara Kalmus. All 3 of those should be up, and then we should be current. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. I wanted to mention something to you about the blurb the Jed Appleroot did about the segment they're having tonight. And I'm only saying tonight if you're hearing it Thursday. If you listen first day, you're getting this. If you listen after Thursday, this isn't going to relate to you, but a lot of people do. Subscribe and listen as soon as it drops. So one of the things I love about the Appleroot webinars, and they're normally very high quality. I said on my blurb on Monday's episode, I said, if you're free the night of the 30th and you want to learn more about the SAT, ACT changes going on, why don't you go ahead and sign up? But what I love about the Appleroot webinars is they send them all out. They send out the recording. So if you're not free, just go to appleroot.com and put your email in, and you'll get the recording sent to your email. So I wanted to make that one correction. All right, friends. As always, I think we've got a good episode for you today, but we'll let you be the judge. We have 2 questions from listeners today in today's episode. The first one is with Kate. And great question from my mom. She's like, listen, my student, her main activity is gymnastics, but they're not going to play in college. Is that going to hurt her? Really not having a lot of other activities other than mostly gymnastics, and any advice for what they should communicate in their application. So Kate joins me to answer that. And then Susan joins me to discuss a question from my mom, who's concerned about how is your son going to get a good rec letter when he has struggled so much with anxiety and depression? So Susan joins me for that. And then for our final part, Lisa will join me for the final segment of my feedback on my visit to the University of Miami in Coral Gables. All right, let's transition to the question from a listener with Kate.
And now it's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, Kate, you are back, and we've got another great question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to play the question, and it's a question I know a lot of people have because I get asked it a lot. So let's play the question and get your thoughts.
Dear Mark and team, I'm a frequent listener to the podcast and I really appreciate all of the shared wisdom you provide. I've benefited a lot from your detailed discussions, both as a parent and as a higher education researcher. My older daughter is a high school junior and is thinking about how she will craft her college admissions applications and essays to share her personal story and interests. She is a strong student who has taken a challenging course load in high school and will be applying to a mix of highly competitive to less competitive public and private colleges. We are seeking your advice regarding her activities section, as she is concerned it may appear confusing or be seen as a red flag by admissions committees. She has been a competitive gymnast since middle school. She invests the vast majority of her free time in gymnastics, dedicating over 9 hours a week to practice in addition to competitions. She also recently secured a summer job coaching younger athletes. However, she does not intend to pursue gymnastics at the collegiate level. As you likely know, collegiate gymnastics requires students to be at the highest level of competition, and she chose to remain at the mid-competition level years ago, as she felt it was a better fit for her skill level and required less of a time commitment. She feels strongly that gymnastics has been a great benefit, as she has been part of a dynamic community, learned the value of perseverance through difficulty, and has learned the importance of physical activity to mental health. However, she is concerned colleges might be confused that she has invested so much time into this sport when she is not planning to pursue it at the college level. Could you provide insight into how colleges view high school athletes who do not plan to compete at the collegiate level? Specifically, are the inherent benefits of a long-term commitment enough to justify a single activity being dominant on her application, or does she risk appearing one-dimensional? Second, how can she best communicate the value of this sport that has provided her a lot as a person to an admissions committee to help them understand her choice? Thank you again for all your information. Regards, Darcy.
Thank you for this question and for your daughter's dedication to a really challenging sport. And I'm sure it's been very challenging and rewarding for your whole family for many years. And as it draws to a close, sounds like it's been a terrific experience for all. So I have no doubt that your daughter has derived a lot of benefits, like physical, mental, emotional, from competing in gymnastics intensely for many years. Actually, our previous head of admissions mentioned once offhandedly that she had been a gymnast growing up, and I was like, yeah, that tracks, because she has incredible discipline and drive. We actually get like a few mid-level gymnasts that cross our desk every year. And how I read these files and how I advise my team is to see the value in a deep dive into an activity. So it's one activity, but it's going to develop a broad variety of skill sets. So especially in the case of gymnastics, we've got dedication, grit, goal setting, healthy competition, mentorship, to name just a few. So I think while your daughter mainly explored one activity, she reaped the developmental benefit of having been involved in a lot of activities. And I would recommend that when she's writing about it, she leans into those skills that she feels are most important to her going forward that she learned from gymnastics. And so, while she's maybe ending her formal engagement as a gymnast, those lessons and those traits that she cultivated are going to carry with her for a lifetime and definitely into college. And I would highlight this coaching younger players element to show that she's paying it forward and she's offering what she's learned to help shape younger athletes. If there's an opportunity in a supplemental essay or in an interview to speak about the kinds of activities that she didn't have time for during high school, but she wants to pursue in college, and you could even tailor that specifically to opportunities at a certain university, I think that would be good to show, growth and interest in kind of opening themselves up to new experiences. And the last thing I would say is that incredible context that the parent gave about why the student decided to remain a mid-level gymnast rather than go to the elite levels. I think, that shows that the student really understands their strengths and how they wanted to spend their time. And I think if they can fit that into the additional info section of the Common App to make it to, leave nothing in doubt as to why the student remained at that level of competition, I think that would be a really great use of that space.
Well, there's a lot of great things you said in there. First of all, personal qualities. Colleges really look for those PQs, right? They're concerned about the quality of their institution. And Kate, listed so many of the personal qualities that are appealing and attractive and transferable that would be demonstrated in the type of commitment that your daughter showed. And I really love your idea, Kate. I used to do this a lot with students when I was doing boarding school admission. Sometimes students would be concerned that they didn't have a lot of activities and that their application resume wasn't going to seem as strong. And I used to tell them, find things at the school that we offer that you didn't have at your previous school that you're excited about, and convey enthusiasm about that. Because, we're looking for people to come in here and get involved. And it could be all kinds of different things. We just don't want you to, be in your room all the time. And so we're going to be able to envision that a lot better if you can communicate some of the things that you're excited about. I do think that's a great tip. And I would consider, to the extent you can, customizing that school by school if it makes sense. So I really like that point. The other thing I want to say is, while it's true that gymnastics is a lot of hours, a lot of times when I'll work with a gymnast, like they're putting 30 hours in a week. Colleges know that. They know how many hours there are in the week. They're not expecting you to have as many different activities as somebody that doesn't have something as time consuming. Like, they realize you're not a robot. There's a certain amount of time in the day. So that's one thing. But the other thing to keep in mind is that there are a lot of other athletes that may not be gymnasts. Maybe they play travel soccer and they have a demanding schedule, or travel volleyball, or travel baseball, or basketball all year round. And they're not going to be good enough to play at the varsity level of the schools that they're looking to matriculate to. So this is something that colleges have a lot of experience with. A student that had a lot of time playing a sport, and they're not going to play that sport in college. And so all of that, that's what we mean by whole person review. It means taking the context of each individual situation into consideration when you do the evaluation. So I think it's a great question. A lot of times people feel like their extracurricular activity is the secret sauce for them. It's their meal ticket. It's what's going to tip them in. And majority of time, that's not the case, right? First of all, the majority of time is not one thing that tips you in. It's more of an overall assessment of what an applicant brings to the table. But in general, this is something that students think a lot. I remember when I interviewed David Hawkins from NACAC, and they always do their NACAC State of Admissions survey with admissions professionals. Well, they did it for the first time ever with students. And they looked at what students' perceptions of what counts the most and how it lines up with what admission officers said. And you can go back and listen to that. If you just put David Hawkins, YCBK into Google, that interview will pull up. But overwhelmingly, students put more emphasis on extracurriculars, thinking that was going to tip them in. And I experienced this on the counseling room on a daily basis. Someone will say something to me like, if I start helping out as a volunteer this summer and I work with like the local YMCA, and the question is that going to get me in? Is that, they don't use the term secret sauce, but it's an overall impression that students have and parents have that doing this one activity or that one activity is really the thing that's going to be dispositive in your application. And I just want to say that is rarely true. And so sometimes the feeling, well, what if you spend all this time in this activity and then you're not doing that in college? Are you toast? Comes from the impression that there's such a high correlation between the thing that you did a lot in college and how admission decisions are made. And that is sometimes true, but it's rarely true. Anything we didn't say, Kate, on this one?
I think we covered it. Yeah. No, I mean, I guess I was kind of in that boat because segue, pun
Mm-hmm.
intended, because I did crew in
Mm-hmm.
high school, like very seriously. And I wrote my main Common App essay on competing in England, but I wasn't a recruited athlete. And but just in my mind, I was like, of course I'm going to write about rowing because it has imbibed me and it has imbued in me all these incredible traits and self-confidence and discipline and it's made me a better person. So I want to talk to the colleges about that. And yeah, I never thought, oh, well, yeah, are they wondering why I'm not pursuing it? I'm like, no, I've been formed by this experience and I want them to hear about it.
Kate, I keep learning about fascinating things about you. I didn't know about crew in England, and I didn't know you used to work at the Emma Willard School, which,
Yeah,
by the way, that campus is gorgeous. I love the architecture. It's beautiful.
isn't it? I
It's
know it's a
absolutely beautiful. It's
big
a
Gothic one.
all girls boarding school in New York, where Kate worked at back in a former life. What were
Hmm.
you doing? Teaching Latin or something? What'd you do there?
Yeah, I was a Latin teacher. They
Good for
have
you.
these internships right out of college. Well,
Hmm.
you probably know about this. For recent grads to get a taste of boarding school life. So I was the Latin teacher that year, which was really fascinating.
Good for you. Now, I
Mhm.
have a question I want to ask you that has nothing to do with this question.
Yeah.
I know you do, like, your title or whatever is like director of application reading or something like that, where you train others on your staff how to file
Mhm.
read.
Mhm.
What do you find are some of the most common misperceptions for younger admission officers that they have about file reading that you need to either correct or to teach when you're teaching a new admission officer how a file is read?
Oh, I think it's really important to always draw everyone's attention back to the fact that we need to read just how we've been talking about today with this question, like we need to read always in the context of that person's school environment, home
Mm-hmm.
environment. So I think it's easy to just be like, oh, this is a good student, and I am at, they've taken a good course load and they seem to be challenging themselves with some honors, some APs, without, always grounding yourself in the school profile, what the school truly offers, because it's easy to be like, oh, this is a public school in Pennsylvania. It probably has tons of APs, but then you find out in the school profile, oh, we actually can only offer certain ones every other year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think
Reading in
always
context, reading in context.
exactly. Just
Yeah.
ensuring, yeah, that you're not comparing and you're not thinking about the student three files ago. You're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the student in the context right in front of you. I mean,
That
that's
was
we
that
all
was a
have
good.
to remember that, but I think
Sure.
that's the key thing.
Yeah, that was kind of tangentially related to this question. All right, in
Yeah,
a good way.
yeah.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. I know this is a busy time for you. I know we got May 1st right around the corner, and you're looking at those numbers, and you're out doing all these presentations and things. Really appreciate you making some time to come on here and spread your wealth of knowledge with our listeners.
It's always a pleasure, and I have a blast. Thanks, Mark.
My pleasure. And thanks again for doing the case studies at Centaurus High School.
Oh
Um,
gosh, that was such a fun night. And the reader, or the listeners had incredible questions. I think, yeah, it was beneficial to all.
yeah, I would imagine it's good. You probably get good feedback by the questions doing that enough that, probably a good way to keep you razor sharp in terms of how, like, perceptions and misperceptions that people have as they read a file, right? Because you can be so engrossed in it that sometimes you might lose sight of what a fresh set of eyes that hasn't read thousands of files and what stands out to them.
Yeah. Do you know, it was funny yesterday. I was in a room full of very ambitious San Francisco
Mhm.
students.
I know that. I know
And
them.
yep. And the way that we kind of ran the case study yesterday, it was
Hmm.
different than I'd done it before. And it was very much like, okay, students, we're going to give you the basics, but we want you to drive this discussion and we want you to like run the committee and advocate or advocate for someone else. And so they did a great job. But it was fascinating to hear what students are saying. So there's this one fictitious student who's applying engineering, but a lot of his APs, which he has many APs, a lot of them are in like English, history, some of the
Mm-hmm.
softer sciences. And so the student wrote on the whiteboard, irrelevant APs for subject. And I was like, wait, he has like 7 APs. And they're like, but they're all irrelevant. And I was like, no, they're not. Like, that's what we want to see. Yeah, I know he's applying engineering, but I still want to see that he's taking a variety of serious courses. And like, it like did not occur to them that non-science APs were important or were something that we would also want to see in an engineering candidate. So,
I think that might be more typical than atypical. Like I get I get that question a lot in the counseling room, you know?
really?
Yeah. And it can also present itself as this low grade won't matter because it's not in math. So
Oh,
it can also present it that way. Like, I don't know. I don't really think that matters because it's not in math or in physics or something. And I heard that engineering wants to see strong performance in math and in physics. And so yeah, so it can present itself in very different ways, but it's a very, very widespread perception.
yeah.
And then of course, the more you go up the selectivity meter, the more, it's a supply and demand thing. And then everything comes into play because you're just not competitive in the pool.
Right. Yeah. It was just really fascinating because this is the first time I've seen it so student driven, how we did the studies. And
Mm-hmm.
it was fascinating to see what, like, just exactly what you're saying about, like the NACAC surveys, like what the students immediately gravitated to and thought was noteworthy versus what we did. Yeah, so much fun. I've been having a great time with the students across several states, working with
Hey,
the
did you
state
see
files.
any trends in applications this year that you think are noteworthy? Like, obviously, so many schools are talking about the decrease in computer science applicants compared to previous years because of the word on the street that they're not finding work. I'm sure you noticed that at some level. Um,
Yeah.
at least
Um,
everybody else has that I've talked to that, I don't know if that's one of them, but I don't know anything that's worth commenting on.
Computer science definitely was really down for us again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there, and maybe this has just been a trend that's gone on for a long time, but it's becoming like pretty acute with our population. Um, the students that pick mechanical engineering, thinking it's like the nice all-around choice that's going to prepare you for a variety of fields.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when a ton of people pick mechanical, then there's a bottleneck and it becomes harder to get in. So, um, at a lot of our, we were talking to our engineering recruitment team, and there's several majors that are going to prepare you with an almost identical skill set walking out the door. And mechanical is not the only kind of general one. We also have engineering physics, things and applied math and things like that. Um, so I would maybe encourage students, unless they're super passionate about like mechanical engineering, also thinking, are there other disciplines that are going to prepare me similarly as I go into the workforce?
And how does you do that? Like, the what role does the specific engineering major you express interest play in the file read? Like, how easy would it be somebody to switch from one discipline of engineering to another?
Yeah. Once you arrive at CU, it's generally pretty easy to switch within engineering, but and we read mostly for by department, or by academic program, even in engineering. But for a couple of the really like oversubscribed ones, we have
Mm-hmm.
to kind of be a
Sure.
little bit more selective.
And is that partly about class size and managing ratios between teachers and
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
balancing all that out? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
makes
There's
a lot of
there's a
sense.
few there's a few of our majors that have, their very own targets
Mm-hmm.
in terms of number of seats that they really have to hit due to like lab space or studio space and things like that.
I do find that perception of mechanical is out there, what you said. Even because like you guys have aerospace, but a lot of times people will say, well, I won't do aerospace because you can do mechanical, and then go from mechanical to aerospace. And
Mhm.
yeah, there can be the perception that mechanical is like that Swiss Army knife engineering discipline.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's other tools out there, I promise.
Kate, I could talk to you all day, but I want to honor your next time commitment, but we'll have to have you back shortly.
Yeah, I'd love that. All right.
Thank you. All right, friends, let's transition to the question from a listener with Susan. All right, I'm with Susan today. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Mark.
I had to bring the master pro up for this hard question.
I don't know about that.
We got a really hard one when we're going to do our best to give you some wisdom on this. And we love the hard ones. Bring them on. Let me play it. And Susan, I'd love to get your thoughts.
Hi, I love your podcast, and I have a question about students who are in their junior year of high school and have been struggling with anxiety and depression and missing school because of that. How do you think that they should approach asking for recommendation letters when they've been sort of struggling junior year? Thank you.
Well, Mom, thanks so much for bringing us this question, because it shows, your deep interest in helping your child, obviously, and your concern about letting them apply to college with getting their best foot forward, right? Having worked in both on the high school side with many kids who had absences from schools for both medical and mental health reasons, circumstances beyond their control. I was often as the school college counselor in the position of supporting them and picking teachers to recommend them and writing my own letter of support. But then also on the college side, reading applications and trying to put the pieces together as a reader to understand what was going on with the student, and especially assessing their readiness to make the transition to the college environment, which, yes, admissions people are determining the competitiveness of an applicant. That's certainly a primary goal, but also the preparation for the experience at that school. Colleges hate attrition. And while they like to give kids a chance, and often do, they also know that they have to be judicious in determining if a student has a good likelihood of being successful. And in the case of students who present with, medical or mental health issues, learning disabilities, disciplinary issues, there are all sorts of kind of what I would call irregularities. And I don't refer to them as deficits. I never would, because they're not. They're just irregular journeys. Colleges have to determine if what they have to offer as an institution is the right kind of support, and has the student shown that they are ready to access the support that perhaps has helped them be successful in the past, and that they certainly recognize as, a very important pathway to success. And I guess I mentioned that first because when colleges read an application of a student who identifies a mental health issue as part of their journey, and some do that more transparently than others, often the guidance counselor at the school can be helpful in talking that through with the student and helping them understand what parts of their experience should be shared, and what aren't necessarily important. For example, students are at no time required to share diagnostic information. And neither is the school, by the way. And I've read a lot of applications in the last few years where the student has spoken to their experience, their challenges, their healing, their ambition for the future, but does not disclose a diagnosis. And then someone at the school does, which is actually against the law, but there you go. So it's really important for a family to own that information and make it clear to whoever is writing recommendations as to what they are welcome or unwelcome to disclose. Recommendations should always be written based on observation, right? Observation, observable behavior, challenges, triumphs, you name it. And sometimes teachers specifically, because they don't have the training that school counselors have around this, that teachers need to be reminded what they're being asked to speak to. And that is absolutely within the students' right to sit with teachers and say, listen, here's why I'm asking you. Here's what I feel you really have to contribute toward my narrative, and toward the picture I want the colleges to have of my preparedness, my strength, and my readiness to make this next step. So, Mom, I would say, you and your child need to sit down and really talk about what do you hope these letters of support to contribute. And then, your child should be very transparent with the teachers as to what that goal is. And I think teachers would be extremely grateful. I think often they don't know really how to handle much of anything if they don't get some clear guidance from the student, about this. The counselor usually is the one who speaks to where a student is at in their self-awareness and their recovery. Okay? Because there were absences in this case during the junior year, it's a little trickier. And actually, one question I would ask if I was sitting with you in my office is, would this student benefit from a repeat year? I worked with a student this year, in fact, who had made that decision. And boy, was it a good one, where, without knowing what the transcript actually looks like, he was in a position where his absences were recorded on the transcript, 56 days or whatever it was. So he was caught between a rock and a hard place where somebody had to talk about it, because by law, I question whether or not that should be there, but who knows, state law. But the question about where the student is in their recovery is on the minds of the colleges. And for a junior, this is going to be a tough one. So I would say, have you thought about a repeat year? If that doesn't feel like a fit.
That's really hard to do in the same school, Susan. I found students that do repeats, it's almost always easier if they're transitioning to a new school.
I've seen it at public schools though, Mark.
And it's been successful and positive.
Yeah.
I find.
Yeah. I've read applications from kids. Yeah. If it depends a little bit on the credit situation and what the transcript looks like. But
I find that kids feel, and it just takes one person, somebody, you can take a lot of incoming for that, especially in public school. The perception is pretty negative about that. Very, very different than in independent schools. But hey, every situation is different.
Well, changing a school, and you and I worked with a lot of kids who came into our independent school as repeat juniors. It was
lots of them.
It was really common, and it was very much admired by the
and
colleges.
9th and 10th as well. I mean, all
That's right. See, I was more aware in college counseling.
You start working them in 11th,
whereas you saw them coming in.
Yes,
but I've seen it work in public schools. I think obviously, I don't want this mom to think that it would be a disaster right off the bat. I think they have to explore what that would look like at their school. For a child who missed a lot of school, could be chemotherapy. It could be, it could be tons of issues. And I think these days kids are more accepting of each other's journeys and their frailties and, running off the tracks and coming back on. It depends on your school, but I have found this generation of kids, because it is more common than it was a decade ago, are simply more present with each other in, kind of giving each other grace. And it depends, of course, on the school, but should definitely be something. I think parents should look at every possibility. Maybe they are thinking, let's just get you through high school and then a gap year to maybe take some additional courses, maybe, do some community college, but there are lots of options to support. Colleges are going to be most concerned with where the student is in their self-awareness, their access to treatment, their stabilization. It doesn't mean they have to be perfect. Very few teenagers are, but they're going to want the recommendations to provide some support for the questions that are going to come up. Again, it does just depend on how much information you're sharing diagnostically. The one thing I would recommend against is what in admissions we call a hit and run disclosure, meaning it's in the application, the diagnosis is there, and that's it. Meaning the student felt compelled to say it, but then there is not kind of a deep dive into the kind of information that would reassure the college that this is a student who gets it, is moving ahead, and is ready to take responsibility for their college experience with support. The most important thing a student can say in an application is, I know what it's going to take for me to be successful now. It's been a rough road. Here's what I've learned about myself. One of the most important things is what I need to be successful, and how important it is for me to advocate for my own needs. That's golden. That's absolutely golden information.
Susan, I tried to approach this question thinking of myself. I worked in schools for 23 years. I'm not in schools anymore, but I did for 23 years. And in different roles, and sometimes it was my job to do the recommendation for all of the students, more when I was in director role on the placement side. Other times I was asked to do a recommendation more sort of as an other recommender. And there were times when I turned down students because I wasn't going to write a recommendation if I didn't feel that I could really be a strong advocate for them. Of course, I couldn't do that when I was in some of the jobs. I had to do a letter for everybody, but in some cases I had the choice. And I would typically say to this student, I honestly think that there's some people that know you better than me that could do more justice for you. But sometimes part of it was I just really didn't think that I was going to be able to champion that student the way that I wanted to. But I'm thinking of this. If some of those students who asked me, if they would have approached me in a way where they would have said, I know I've had a lot of struggles and challenges, and I'm not expecting, you to make me sound like whatever, the best kid ever. I'm aware of that. But if you could speak to and maybe listen to a few things, like any area you've seen growth in me, if they would have approached it in a way where I would have felt they weren't necessarily expecting me to just wax eloquent about how incredible they were, I probably would have said yes to some of those kids that I steered them to somebody else. So that's just the thought that I have. Because repeating a year is a really big thing, and that's something that most people don't do, and it takes a while to wrap their hands around that. So I think we should work off the assumption the family's probably not going to do that for this purpose. And so if they say, no, I need a recommendation, that would be one thought that I would have is when you ask in a way where you acknowledge your own challenges and say, I know that there's certainly going to be students probably you can say a lot. So a lot of things about you can't say about me. And I'm not expecting that from you. I want you to know that. That would be one thought that I have. I always appreciate Susan always brings up, let the person know why you're selecting them. That's something that can be very meaningful. I think it's something that not a lot of people do when they ask for recommendations. That can be very moving. I went through a difficult time, and I've always felt like you genuinely cared about me as a person. And that's just one of the reasons why I would love for you to be one of my recommendation writers. That can be deeply moving. So I would reaffirm what Susan said there. Let them know why you're selecting them, and take a little pressure off them that I'm not necessarily expecting this A+ recommendation, and that that could help. It was a little confusing here because I was like, okay, is this a teacher rec? Because teacher rec, you get a lot of choice, and they're saying, but then again, I was like, the counselor is the one that, like you said, that would speak to absences and
Right.
that. So then, is it the counselor rec and they don't have a choice about who it is, but they don't know how to ask the counselor? That part was a bit confusing to me.
I think she was really focusing on teacher recommendations.
Teacher.
The other thing that occurred to me is that as this mom is thinking about letters of recommendation, there may be some people who this student knows well from other areas of involvement. I remember working with the student who said, wow, if I only could have my Girl Scout leader who's known me since middle school and knows my family and has kind of walked alongside me. And I said, well, let's look at your schools and see if they welcome. But even if they don't specifically say we welcome an outside recommendation, let's do it. And again, be really clear with that person who else is writing for you and what you would hope that they would represent as a voice in the application. And that made her feel amazing because she felt very known, very seen by that person who had watched her deal with some extremely difficult stuff. And
I mean, that's a really good point, Susan, because, unless a school comes out and says, and they're very clear about it, we don't want any outside. There are some schools, you'll talk to them when you talk to admission officers, that will say, we don't require it, but we'll read it if it's there. There are quite a few schools that fit in that category. We're not talking about schools that admit by numbers, obviously. We're not talking, that's a whole different situation. There wouldn't be recommendations there. But that's something that I will hear fairly frequently when I talk. We don't require them, but if they're in the file, we'll read them. And you do get an opportunity. If they're going to read them, you do get an opportunity to have other dimensions of who you are included in the evaluation. So I think that's a great point. Well, thank you, Susan, as always. And thank you for sending in this difficult question. I know it has to be a tough time, but I commend you for listening to podcasts like ours to educate yourself so that you can best serve your kid.
Absolutely. And know that you're not alone, that this is something colleges are accustomed to dealing with, and they are going to respect your child's story.
Absolutely. Thank you. Friends, you now have 7 books you can pick from if we play your SpeakPipe question or comment or tip on the air. We have our 4 Princeton review books, The Best 390 Colleges, College Admissions 101, Essays That Kick Apps, and Princeton Digital SAT Prep. Our 3 new editions are The Calm College Method by Lisa Ruff and Linda Depker, paperback or Kindle, Peter Pitt's Small College Magic Kindle version, and College Unmazed has a book, Your Guide to Design and Document Your Home School by Holly Ramsey and Michelle Everett, paperback edition. Our authors have generously agreed to cover the shipping and handling. Just send your name and full address, the book that you want, and the episode number where we aired your SpeakPipe question or tip. Please send that to your collegeboundkid@gmail.com. We'll forward your request to the authors. All right, friends, let's transition to the final part of my College Spotlight on the University of Miami and Coral Gables with Lisa.
And now it's time for our College Spotlight of the Week.
All right, friends, we've reached the final part, Old Style Spotlight. You asked, we delivered. I enjoy doing these. They just take 7 hours to produce a good one, and that's after your 4 hours on the campus. So that's the only reason I haven't done as many. But I know it's something you guys like, so I'm planning on at least give you 3 or 4 of these a year.
Do you have a sense of what kind of student would really fit in there or do well? Because, not everyone is like emotive on a spirit basis.
Yeah. I was going to mention that. Like, there is no question there's a community of extroverts there, and no better example than they call them their P100. It stands for like the President's 100 group. And these are the university ambassadors and tour guides. I used to run a tour guide program with 90 tour guides. I've never seen such well-trained, polished tour guides. Like, they were high energy, enthusiastic, great communicators. I interacted with a lot of them. So there's definitely that community of extroverts there, because people do like to kind of go out at Miami. Like, it is your quintessential work hard, play hard school. Like, I think it's a myth. And it's something that we encounter a tremendous amount in counseling. Miami party school. Like, you bring it up and people just dismiss it. And I talked to a lot of people about that. And I really believe what they said. You know what? There's a couple of things. One, that's the image of the city of Miami. South Beach, the bars, all of that. That's the image of the city. And then that partly's passed over to us. And then if you go back to the 80s and 90s, and there's a very famous documentary on ESPN. They do these 30-30s, and they did one on the U back in the heyday when, early 90s and 80s, when Miami won 5 out of 10 national championships. And that place was a different school than it is now. Like, in fact, after all of that, Donna Shalala, he used to be in the Clinton administration, they hired her as the president, and she came in and cleaned up that stuff. So when people say it's a party school, like Dartmouth's a party school, Williams is a party school, Washington and Lee is a party. Like, to me, I differentiate between a place where Duke is a party school. I differentiate between a place where people party, but then they handle their business.
Right. Yeah. It seems like, you have to be pretty academically skilled to get into Miami, and you're not just going to give that up once you get there.
Yeah.
And I think the classes are pretty rigorous. So, it's maybe more of a work hard, play hard kind of mentality.
That's exactly the language that I use. It's a work hard, play hard school. Like, people have fun. And they do a lot of different fun things. Like, they love to go to Little Havana. They talked to me about that. They love to go to the Everglades. They love to take trips to Key West. There's all this talk about, the South Beach. That's kind of the party beach, tourist beach. I had student after student after student tell me, we like to go to Key Biscayne. It's a little more chill. And that's like the popular beach that they go to. But yeah, you do have the beach right there. So I wanted to say this. So I definitely feel it's an extrovert culture, but I don't feel like an introvert couldn't be happy there. Come on, there's a lot of introverts in this world. You're not going to have a whole entire community of extroverts.
Yeah, somebody needs to listen.
Exactly. That's well said, right? Somebody needs to listen. I love it. So you had said who would do well there?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely somebody who likes a community spirit, somebody that likes to get involved, somebody that likes a mid-sized school. Like, it's a really nice mid-sized school because it does sort of have some of your components are bigger, but yet the departments have a lot of individual personal attention, like access to professors. Student after student after student told me like they liked the access to the professors, the opportunity to do research, the smallness of the environment, the personalized nature of the environment. You are going to have to be someone that is not like allergic to hot weather. Because, I used to say to people when they would say, oh, I can't go there, it's too hot. My point was always, well, school ends at the end of April, so you're not around during the hot months. But I was there on February 22nd, and at the start of the tour, before we left on tour, they said, I apologize, it's so hot today. And I like hot weather. But that heat was coming down pretty good. And so for people that don't like, hot weather, I could see how they could find, well, my March and April are going to be miserable, and it is humid.
Mm-hmm.
So I certainly think that could be a factor. I would say the really hardcore, deep intellectual, talk a lot all the time, I don't feel that's the culture. Like, I did have a student that transferred there because she wasn't finding that. In fact, listeners are going to meet her. I've got a few students lined up to do an interview on transfers that I'm going to do later this year, and she's one of them. She did not find sort of that culture of, but I know her. She wants to be having these deep intellectual conversations a lot, and she found that at Brown, and she found it to be different. Now, I do feel some of it depends on major too, because I have had people experience that in different majors. My people that have been in health sciences in different fields. So I don't want to, overstate that. Yeah, I think a lot about it. I think one thing that I would say would not be good, or one complaint that you do hear, is there is wealth culture there. And people did talk about that. They talked about, like, there's a little bit of a stereotype of daddy's money. And, there was, people felt some pressure, like the cars people are driving, the handbags that they're wearing. But, that is a hard thing. It's hard to not get that at any highly selective private school.
Yeah.
I mean, Richmond has some of that. Duke definitely has that. UPenn definitely has that.
Like USC.
Well, so let me say that USC is the school by far that Miami reminds me of the most. Like, to me, it's not even close. I think that it's got reminds me of Tulane a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I would say USC is the school that is most like, which is also a larger private school, even bigger, right? It's pushing 30,000. But the beautiful campus and access to the city and the sports culture and the, people involved, smart, ambitious, positively minded kids. Have you been to USC, Lisa?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'd
be interested. List. Yeah, I'd be interested to see if you agree with me. Like, I came away feeling like USC was the school that reminded. If Duke was bigger, then Duke would be another one. But it is different because Durham and Chapel Hill and Raleigh's a little further away. Is not like Miami. It's a major international city that's close by.
Right.
So USC's got that energy still, where you're still close to the city. But I found students to be collaborative, ambitious, positive-minded, community-oriented, and there's just a lot of kids that can go there. And even that there is wealth culture, there's still a pretty decent number of kids getting financial aid. So it's not like you're only going to be around rich kids.
Yeah.
What was your experience? Who did you come away feeling like is a good fit?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as what you said. I think that kids who want to work hard, you got to be smart. Your classes are not going to be easy, but there's also like a vibrant going out culture. There's some, I think Greek life has got some strength to it there, but it's because it is like I know the year I was there, they're really beefing up the need-based financial aid for first-generation students. I think that they're making an effort to really recruit things. I think it's going to be more of a mix of people in terms of the socioeconomic status. But I think if you're smart and you have you're high energy and you're enthusiastic and you like warm weather, this could be a great place.
Yeah, the one other thing I want to say about the money, some of it is not just it's Miami's a very expensive city.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very expensive city. Like, I was talking to a student that was talking about, like, you want to, go out and go downtown and get a drink. It's $20.
Yeah.
Like that's like, so, you almost have to talk to people that don't have money like that to know what that feels like. Everybody's going out and I can't do it. If you talk to someone that has money, they really don't have the perspective of someone that doesn't.
Right.
So Miami's just an expensive city, and that's just something people need to be mindful of. I remember I gave Karis and Joy a trip there once for some occasion, and they came back talking about how broke they were, like just how much the restaurants and how much everything was.
Yeah, that was my impression when we visited, that, my food budget got blown through pretty quickly. So
yeah, and it's also construction has gotten, the traffic has gotten so much worse there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's funny, from like 14 through 16, I went there a lot because Joy was like looking at a lot of schools all around there, Division II basketball, the Sunshine State Conference. And so we were there a lot, like doing, meeting coaches and all that. And we used to stay, just north of the city, like closer to Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach, we would stay. And I just can't believe how much more traffic there is.
Yeah, a lot of people are in Miami in that area. I mean, it's a very populated place.
All right, Lisa. Well, I think we covered everything. Is there any other questions you have, or anything you feel we
No,
didn't address?
I definitely think it's a school to look at. And as you said, I think it has to be really diverse academic programs. It's not just a one note kind of school. So I think it could fit a lot of people's interests.
There's one other thing I didn't say, and that is Miami as a city feels to the students, and also I did some research after I talked to them, like it is just taking off as a business capital. Like they're calling it the Wall Street of the South, and Brickell is like that district where the business district. And student after student talked about like Brickell is like amazing. All the stuff's happening in Brickell. And I started talking to more people and did more research. And like the transformation of that area is like very noticeable. And look, like recently Citadel has moved their headquarters there. Microsoft moved their headquarters there. Palantir just made an announcement. They're moving from Denver to South Florida. I don't know if they're going to locate in Brickell, if they're going to be more like West Palm, but students were very excited about the business. One student even told me, like, I don't think I would have come here. I'm a business major if it wasn't for how like Brickell had been transformed in the last 5 years. So that's something worth mentioning. But I am going to play something. So I recently interviewed Barbara Kalmus on the podcast, and she reached out to me when she made an announcement I was going to do the spotlight on Miami because her daughter went there for undergrad and grad. And I asked her if she could share her experience as a parent and her daughter's experience on SpeakPipe. So Barbara sent a message in. I'm going to close out with her message, but I think it captures the essence of what I've said here. But this is from the perspective of both a parent of an undergrad and grad student and a student who lived it. And so we'll close with that.
Hey, Mark, it's Barbara here from Acala. I am so excited that you're going to do a segment on University of Miami. I'm a little biased. I'll be upfront about it. I love this school so much. My daughter went there, both for undergraduate and graduate, and I couldn't have been happier with her years there and continuing afterwards. Her best friends are still from there. She actually flew down for the game last month. It's just an amazing place that builds such a feeling of community. And I don't think most people realize that. I think one of the things that I love so much about the school is it's mid-size. I mean, it's not huge, but it certainly is not small. But the departments within it are small. So you have this amazing advantage of being in this big school, rah-rah, great sports, great energy. Yet in your academic departments, you're really special because the departments are small. With my daughter, what I loved so much was from her freshman year, first day on campus. She was an education major, specializing in the field of autism. And from her first day, they had her placed inside classrooms in schools throughout Miami. And she spent 4 years in classrooms. That is so amazing because I'm sure, as you know, most education programs, you got 4 months, be a student teacher, and then boom, you're in a classroom. Miami really understands how important it is to give kids real hands-on experience, not just for 4 months, but for 4 years. So that's what I just so love about this school. I did ask my daughter, I said, if you were going to be on a podcast about Miami, what would you say was the best thing about it? Her answer, which made me crack up, was, are you kidding me? She said, we got to go to school where everyone else only goes for spring break. Anyway, made me laugh, but it's actually true. I also asked her, so what else about Miami did you love so much? And she said, everybody's happy. The sun is shining. The air is warm. Everybody's just happy to be there. And what I always used to say about my daughter as she was growing up, you can't beat happy. And so, yeah, I'm so excited you're going to do the segment. If you ever have any questions or have parents who want to talk to another parent who had a student there, always give them my name. Happy to talk to them. To refer them to my daughter. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to the segment. Go Canes.
Friends, I know Barbara, and she was very genuine, and she really would be interested in talking to anyone who's interested in the U. So if you do want to talk to her, just reach out to us at yourcollegeboundkid@gmail.com, and I'll connect you with Barbara. But before we completely get out of here, I need you to quickly say, Lisa, give me an update on your daughter, Sonia.
Yes. Well, for those of you who don't know, my daughter is a senior in high school. And so we got to go through the application process. And she is very excited to be attending the University of Richmond in Richmond, Virginia in the fall. So we're really looking forward to that. We're going to go to Admitted Students Day in a few weeks. And we're just very excited. It's an exciting time to learn more in depth about a new school.
Yes, we're excited. Another school I love. We're wishing Sonia all the best, and we'll have to get updates from you.
Yes. Well, that's happening, right?
Awesome.
You get the inside skinny. So
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks, Lisa. Friends, on Monday's episode, we're going to have a brand new interview with Jed Appleruth, which I'm hoping we can air because I record it tomorrow. So if we have any technical glitches, I have a backup. I've done another interview with a student of mine at Wake Forest. So that's the backup if we have tech issues, but hopefully we won't have tech issues, and you'll hear from Jed Appleruth. And I'm excited about this. It's something Jed and I have been talking about for, I don't know, a year and a half maybe. And so what we're going to talk about is basically an FAQ, a frequently asked questions on self-prepping for the ACT and the SAT. So there's a student that does better with self-prep. It's not normal, but they're out there. So we're going to talk about things like, what does the research show on score prep? Who's the kind of student that will do well with self-prep? What's a good strategy for a student if they do self-prep? It's an interview we've never done before. I think it'll be one that you'll enjoy. So that'll be the first part of our segment on Monday. And then we'll have the final part of the SDSU interview with two students, Lauren and Sophie. Friends, you've heard me announce a request to see if we could get some volunteers to help send swag out to both interviewees and to donors. So when I'm meeting with the volunteers, I'm doing 50-minute meetings with them to go over everything. I say, listen, we've got these mugs, we've got this pen set. I've used these to-do sticky pads in the past. I want to order some more of them. And I'm going to have this really nice bookmark made up that I'd like to be able to send out as well. And you can probably already guess what it says on the bookmark. You know what it is. It's not where you go. It's not where you go. It's not where you go, but it's what you do when you get there, and it's what you do when you get out of there. That is what will determine your career success. See you on Monday, friends. And that's our show. Big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Escabel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our international admissions expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Matvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.